We are a few short months away from the X-Men reboot. Tom Brevoort stepping in as the group editor, bringing in a whole new creative team, probably a lot of new editors in there. We're going to have X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, Exceptional X-Men, and a handful of other titles. As far as the other titles, we only know Greg Capullo will be on Wolverine, although that's rumored to be written by Saladin Ahmed. We'll see if that actually happens. I imagine it does, because that rumor has been pretty prevalent for months now. But we are getting some details regarding how often and how many issues of Uncanny and the adjectiveless X-Men series that we're actually going to get, what the Uncanny book is actually going to be about, some new characters that are going to be introduced, as well as what Tom Brevoort himself is trying to accomplish with this reboot, trying to get X-Men fans excited about X-Men again, while probably trying not to alienate the Krakoa era fans, which I personally think is completely impossible. I do not think that you can court both audiences at the same time and keep everyone happy. I just don't think it's feasible, but it does appear that's exactly what they're going after. And I do think they've made some strategic blunders right out of the gate with just the information that we do have. Now, I could be completely wrong about all of this stuff, and maybe this is going to feel like the 1990s X-Men again, or 2000 X-Men, or even Chris Claremont level X-Men, where it was just awesome and badass across the board. But I do not see that happen. But I hope I'm proven wrong by Tom Brevoort and the new team coming aboard. Hours after Uncanny X-Men writer Gail Simone announced at WonderCon 2024 that her series Uncanny X-Men would be aiming to ship 18 issues a year, X-Men group editor and Marvel executive editor Tom Brevoort said that is not alone, and the adjectiveless X-Men series by Jed MacKay will also be aiming for 18 issues a year. Tom Brevoort stated in his Substack newsletter, before the editorial switchover, Jordan White had been planning to have two main X-Men books that shipped 18 issues a year, and that plan sounded wise to me, so we'll be keeping it in place. X-Men and Uncanny X-Men will alternate in this regard, with 2 issues on sale every other month in the rotation. Just looking at this on surface level, I don't think emulating any of Jordan White's plans regarding X-Men publication is a wise move. His time as X-Men group editor has been full of failure, starting with Age of X-Men, obviously peaking with House of X Powers of 10, which was a Jonathan Hickman thing, and then basically running Hickman off and kind of destroying what the Krakoan era could have been. They're trying to land it right now with Fall of the House of X and Rise of the Powers of 10, very, very unsuccessfully. It's just a train wreck right now. So me personally, if I'm the man in charge, I'm wanting a clean break and not emulating anything that Jordan White was going to do. And even if it was something that Jordan was going to do, I wouldn't say, yeah, I'm doing what Jordan's going to do. I would have said, yeah, this was my plan, and I'm not sure what that guy would do. But Tom Brevoort obviously is taking a different approach. 18 issues a year. Now, if you had Mark Bagley on the book, or if you had John Romita Jr. in his prime, you could probably do that with one steady artist. But we do have Ryan Stegmana on X-Men, and then we also have David Marquez on Uncanny X-Men. And one of the things that's really bothered a lot of Marvel fans over the last, decade or so, probably longer than that, is the rotating artists, the fact that there's no consistency or continuity, not even within the stories themselves in the universe, but there's no continuity when it comes to the art itself, especially with an artist like Stegman, who has a very distinct style and is going to bring his own Stegman flavor to it. Maybe you can bring in a Guillaume March or somebody like that, but for the most part, it's going to be jarring when you're switching artists all the time, and it's something that almost encourages people to kind of walk away and be like, you know what? I really love that Stegman art, but the story's not great. Do I really want to stick around for it? You're almost daring people to maybe not even sample to begin with, or to jump off as soon as the art changes. I don't think that's a very good move. Gail Simone, who has had some great work in the past. I don't want to undersell what Gail Simone has been able to accomplish within comic books, but it's in the distant past. It's been over a decade since Gail Simone was an important writer, in comic books in general. And it's been a long time since she actually had a hit series. Jed MacKay is writing a lot of stuff, and, I guess through attrition is the top writer at Marvel now. I would still say it's Jonathan Hickman, but I guess in continuity, it's Jed MacKay. And I'm sure there are some Jed MacKay fans who are like, well, it's a Jed MacKay book, I'll check it out. But, he's not Scott Snyder, he's not Jeff Johns, he's not Grant Morrison, he's not Jonathan Hickman. He's not a name that really puts some asses in seats. Stegman does that. David Marquez might be able to do that with Gail Simone. So really the bigger name creators on these books are the artists, and the 18 issue a year plan here where they're not going to be able to keep the artists on the book just is a bad idea to me. Perhaps Jed McKay, has been waiting for this opportunity. He's been on Avengers for a while now. He's got the big Blood Hunt event, which I'm not excited about, but I hope he changes my mind on that one. But a lot of people that know names and are drawn into the book by the creators are going to be more interested in David Marquez and Stegman. So I just don't think that's a very good idea. Now, we do have some more information regarding the direction of Uncanny X-Men, which is certainly, I don't know, it doesn't feel like X-Men, but let's get into it. Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men series will star Wolverine, Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee, but it's much more than just a return to the title status quo. During her Spotlight panel at WonderCon 2024, Simone described the impending Uncanny X-Men relaunch as a creepy, Southern Gothic tale set up in a new Louisiana base of operations for the team, a rustic old house which Gambit grew up in. Simone also goes on to say that she and David Marquez are creating 4 new Young Mutants to co-star in the books, each with powers based on what Simone calls hidden disabilities, leading to their powers not being obvious like popping claws in reference to Wolverine's favorite party trick. So there's a lot to kind of unpack there. Now, just right off the bat, doing a Southern Gothic like horror spin on X-Men, there's certainly been horror type stories within the X-Men universe. New Mutants for a long time was almost more of a horror book than really a superhero book. And we've seen kind of horror type of stuff with maybe like an Arcade when he's got Murder World and stuff like that. But they are doing a Southern Gothic tale right now in Incredible Hulk. And that kind of fits the character. Hulk is a monster and all those things. And I don't think it's going very well for Philip Kennedy Johnson at this point. They keep changing artists on that book too, which is really, really hurting it just as far as the story and continuity and whatnot. But I don't know that Southern Gothic screams X-Men or X-Men screams Southern Gothic. X-Men at the heart of the book, whether you want to admit it or not, are a superhero team. They should be fighting super villains, not ghosts, not monsters. There's nothing wrong, I guess, with them finding a monster in Louisiana or something like that. But for that to be the vibe of the book and kind of what they're going towards, with David Marquez on it too, like that even fits Ryan Stegman's style much better than David Marquez, who has a really cool, sleek, awesome style that fits modern comic books and, would be better served in space than it would be going through like, I don't know, cemeteries in Louisiana. So it's almost like a discombobulated idea right from the beginning. It sounds like maybe she has an idea for a story and maybe is squeezing X-Men around it. Now, she does have the better team. You got Wolverine, Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee. A lot of the great characters that people love from that cartoon series. A lot of just great characters, period, when it comes to X-Men history. Adding 4 new mutant co-stars to this team is going to do nothing for those other 4 characters. It would be better to just go with the 5 that they mentioned, do 6 issues, and then add a character and maybe see what people think. And then maybe a year later, add another character. But to add in 4 characters that you're trying to flesh out all at the same time while having to give Wolverine and Nightcrawler and Gambit and Rogue and Jubilee the spotlight that they deserve because they're fan favorite characters probably isn't going to work. I don't care if you have 18 issues. It's hard to flesh out a new character on a team book just to begin with. This isn't, giant size X-Men back when X-Men wasn't popular and they hadn't got the formula right. And you can add a character like a Wolverine that hadn't really been fleshed out at all. You could add some new characters like a Storm and stuff like that. And build around them because there weren't really a lot of popular X-Men characters. X-Men is one of the biggest franchises in the world, and people are going to expect Wolverine to do Wolverine shit, and people are going to expect Nightcrawler to do Nightcrawler stuff. And, they're in Louisiana in Gambit's house. They're going to expect some Gambit stuff, throwing cards. And it's going to be very, very difficult to find the space to fill out 4 new characters and have them be impactful or memorable or anything to stand up to these long-standing characters. I'm not saying don't introduce new characters, but just introducing 4 new characters on an established team of established characters is going to be very, very difficult. And getting new characters off the ground is just difficult to begin with. Plus, you have the fact that you have a setting that doesn't make a whole lot of sense with a genre lapped on top of the superhero genre that you already have that doesn't make sense either. So I do think, just on the surface of it, it doesn't sound very smart. And like I said, I do hope that I'm proven wrong about this, and maybe I'm completely off base, and there's a really good idea out there to do some type of John Constantine story with Wolverine and Rogue. Nightcrawler, I guess, makes more sense because he's kind of a Catholic religious character and everything. But what the hell is Jubilee going to do there? Like, is she going to have her kid? Is her kid going to be a dragon? There's a lot of weird elements to this. Now, as far as what Brevoort is trying to accomplish with all that, Tom Brevoort, who worked extensively with the Krakoan-era architect Jonathan Hickman on various projects at Marvel, including Avengers and Secret Wars, says it's foolish for them to consider aping to replicate what Hickman did, especially following Hickman's decision to exit the X-Men books in 2021, stating, "Nobody else on Earth thinks the way that Hickman does, and it would be a fool's game to even attempt it. You're not going to outdo him that way. Instead, we're going to do our own thing and count on the talent and the inventiveness and commitment of our creative teams to see us through." And that is certainly a smart idea, to where you don't try to continue on with Jonathan Hickman's work without Jonathan Hickman. It certainly blew up in the face of Jordan White. It didn't work. You're winding down a time that I think most X-Men fans just cannot wait for it to be over. They can't imagine that it could get worse. And I will put this out there. It can always get worse. We've been proven time and time again. Just because you think you've hit your lowest point or you hit rock bottom, that does not mean that's actually the case. It can get worse than that. Hopefully it doesn't. I do have faith that Jed MacKay will do better work than Jerry Duggan for certain on the flagship book. There should be some type of improvement, but it is smart to kind of veer away from the Krakoan era. But they've also stated they're keeping a lot of elements of the Krakoan era in it to kind of, I guess, keep those fans around, if there are even enough fans. Apparently there aren't, or they probably would have continued on with it. But it's smart to move away from that. Without Jonathan Hickman, like the ideas of House of X, Powers of 10, and moving them forward was always fool's gold. It was a road to nowhere, but disappointment and failure and being exposed as somebody that's not quite to Hickman's level when it comes to fleshing out and executing really high concept, really cool ideas. Very few writers in modern comic books are even able to actually do anything kind of like that. There are a few names out there that I could think of off the top of my head that could at least attempt it. But, Jed MacKay is not that guy. Gail Simone's not that guy, and certainly not Eve Ewing on Exceptional X-Men, which it does appear that even Tom Brevoort is kind of conceding, this book has no staying power. We're not going to treat it like the two actual flagship books. It's going to be a throw in there and likely gets canceled. I'll be surprised if it goes past 6 issues. If it goes past 6 issues, it's likely because they don't want to admit defeat, and they'll just keep it till 12 and be like, we always knew it was just 1 year run. We kind of knew that was going to happen to save face or whatever. But there's too many titles, and now it turns out there's likely going to be too many issues of the books requiring lots of artist changes and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't sound like Gail Simone maybe is interested in writing a superhero book starring the X-Men. It sounds like she wants to do something Southern and Gothic and horror related, which certainly has its place within the Marvel Comics universe, and there are characters that work within that. And I'm not saying that the X-Men couldn't work within that for a story arc or two, maybe. I would say story arc, not even 2, but we shall see. I want Tom Brevoort and Gail Simone and Jed MacKay and Eve Ewing and everybody else associated with this likely to be Saladin Ahmed. It does appear, I'll be shocked if we don't see Christopher Can't write well. Jackson Lansing, Colin Kelly, probably see them in there as well. There's going to be some really bad writers. I think we'll probably see Celeste Bronfman as well. I'll be shocked if they're up to the task and they're able to do it, but I do hope that it happens. But just with the information that we do have, and it is all very surface level. We're not getting into the nitty-gritty details. We've got titles and team makeups and general ideas of what the books are going to be. It doesn't sound completely impressive or even have all that much promise, to be completely honest. If you would like more conversations regarding the X-Men and Marvel and DC and just comic books in general, whether it be movies and publishing and all that kind of stuff, there is one place that's even better than Thinking Critical YouTube, and that is Thinking Critical Patreon, where we have 8 hours of brand new podcasts every single week with Doc, Aaron Sparrow, Jim, 32 Flavors, and Nick Weiser, all your favorite guests like that. 32 hours a month of new podcasts out there, long form stuff, lots of fun to be had there. There's a link to the Patreon in the video description.